Nothing will crush a real estate investor's spirit like landlord stress. The difference between being successful and miserable in managing properties is education. Welcome to Landlord University, where landlords learn. Landlord University is recorded from inside the RentPrep office, where Stephen White and Jeff Pearson share the lessons learned from working with some of the most successful landlords.
Welcome to Landlord University Night School. I'm Jeff Pearson. I'm here with my co-host, Stephen White. Hello, Stephen. How are you doing this evening?
Yeah, pretty good, Jeff. So before we even start talking about how to deal with skeptic applicants, this sort of came about from a phone call that I received from a tenant, but it's also something that a lot of landlords have asked, called in or emailed in. And so it just kind of reminded me that, anytime that any of our listeners have a topic that they want us to cover, that they may have questions on, feel free to email us. A lot of the topics we get come directly from landlords, which is how we want to keep it. It makes it pretty authentic. We want to make sure that we're covering things that landlords want to talk about and want to hear. So shoot us an email at landlordu@rentprep.com and let us know what you want to hear. And we're always open to discussing, just about anything on here. We've covered, in the 100+ episodes, just about everything that you could think of, and
Yes.
and there's millions more. So anything that you guys, any of the listeners out there want to hear, shoot us an email and let us know.
Perfect.
So dealing with skeptic applicants, we'll jump right in. And like I said, the idea for the topic came from a phone call that I took earlier in the week from an applicant who was using our filling out our rental application that the landlord had given them. So landlord had gone on to rentprep.com, printed out our free application. The applicant now has that in their hands, and of course, it's branded with our logo and our phone number on there. So the applicant just wanted to get some peace of mind that the information that he was about to fill out was going to be used appropriately, and he wanted to be sure that he wasn't just giving it to some creep on Craigslist who is going to, steal his information or steal his application fee. So it's not really a super uncommon thing. We do get calls from tenants here and there.
Mm-hmm.
More often, we're getting calls from landlords who say, this applicant doesn't want to give me their employer's information, or this applicant doesn't want to give me, some sort of information. And it's usually that skeptic applicant that's, that causes just enough concern that the landlord starts to second guess, what am I legally allowed to ask them? What should I immediately assume that they're bad because they don't want to answer something? So I think it's an important topic to kind of cover from a couple of different angles.
It is.
So from the landlord's perspective, we've talked about this a million times, and I'll drive it home once more. If you're operating like a business professionally, you're going to kill a lot of the doubt right out the gate. They need to feel comfortable with who they're dealing with. And if you come across as somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, who's unorganized, who's just taking this information and doing God knows what with, you're definitely going to, raise some concern with these people that you're asking for their information. So it could be a good indicator to, have some self-awareness or reflect on what you're doing. And it may be an opportunity for you to change some of your practices if you're not giving applicants the warm and fuzzy when you're asking them for their information.
And
So
there are a number of ways to make sure that you're presenting yourself to your applicants in a professional way. It's going to start with your ad. Make sure that your ad doesn't have typographical errors. It needs to look professional. Does it need to be, do you have to go out and hire somebody to do all kinds of fancy graphics? No, not at all. Just look at the other ads. Look at the ads that you like and emulate those. And certainly there are aspects of them that you can copy pretty much directly within reason. Some of these people are professionals, and you don't want to steal their work directly, but you can use it as a foundation for what you're doing. But make sure that your ad looks professional, that it gives enough description so that people understand what they're going to be looking at, which again, because you're giving them a good, solid description, it makes them feel more comfortable about it. It's not a situation where, You just give a 2-line description and a picture. That's a lot of red flags right there.
Yeah. And on the flip side of that, look at the ads that you don't trust and avoid doing the things that they're doing.
Yes.
Because, when I go through Craigslist, and I may be different a little bit because I have a lot of experience with this, and I feel like I could spot the scams a mile away.
Right.
And I've heard so many of them. And, our scam alert that we try and put out, we're covering a lot of these topics, and a lot of it, comes from the ads.
Hmm.
So go through the ads. If you come across one that looks fishy, try and pick out what makes it look fishy. And I think for most of the scams that I've seen, it's usually painting a picture where it almost seems too good to be true. So you don't want to embellish. You don't want to, make it sound like they're passing up the deal of a lifetime if they don't call you.
Right.
Those usually jump out to me as being a scam. So, look at what you like and look at what you don't like, and avoid the things that you don't like seeing on there.
Hmm.
Um, so great point on that. And then also, as you said, presenting yourself professionally. It's not a bad idea to put on a nice shirt
That's
when you're
right.
showing the apartment, or put on nice shoes, or clean up if you're the type of person that works outside or with your hands, or painter or whatever. And you have to show up looking less than professional. Give them a reasonable explanation.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll meet you right after work. At that point, you let them know. I work in construction. Usually, I prefer to, uh, to dress appropriately for a business meeting. But in this situation, please understand, I'll be coming directly from work, so I will be in my work clothes. People will understand that. They'll respect it and appreciate it.
Yeah, it'll soften the blow when you show up looking disheveled, and like you're dirty or filthy,
Yes.
and they don't make that immediate impression, like, who is this guy, and do I trust giving him my security deposit?
And I would reinforce it too. You mentioned it to them in your initial contact when you set that appointment, either by phone or by email. When you arrive, apologize again. Again, I'm sorry. I usually dress in business attire for these types of business meetings, but I did just come to work, as I mentioned to you. Puts it back at top of mind for them.
Yeah. The other thing, for dealing with skepticism is have a procedure in place. You never want to look like you're winging it, and I think a lot of times that makes people uneasy, that if you don't have a procedure set in place. So if you say something like, yeah, take the application home, and get it back to me whenever you can, or whatever, and I'll let you know. I mean, really break down exactly what you want to see happen and what you're going to do. So, hey, if you can get this application back to me tonight, that's great. I'll begin to process it. I'll take a look at it. I'll run it through for the background check tomorrow. Be open with them and let them know what your plans are, because looking unorganized or looking like you don't have a procedure in place is also painting the picture that you're not professional.
Yes. And I've got a couple of experiences, one on both sides of the table, that I think can shed some light on this. One, there was a time number of years ago we were looking to rent a place, and I was actually out of town. My wife went and toured the property, submitted an application with all of our information, which it's part of the process. And then she didn't hear back from the person that she had talked to. She tried to call, she didn't get a call back. Went back on Craigslist to look at the ad, and somebody had indicated that this was a scam. Well,
Uh, yeah.
that's huge red flags.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've given this person all of our personal information, and we've got this problem. So at that point, we went to all the online things. We locked down all the credit cards,
Hmm.
and then the next day they called us,
Right.
had a conversation. We understood what their situation was, but it's a panic situation at that point when you've provided that information. So if you're renting a place out, let people know when you're going to contact them, how to contact you, and how long your response time will be. If they contact you, how long is it going to be? On the flip side, I rented a place where I walked in, and the prospective landlord provided me with copies of his tax bill
Hmm.
and his utility bill to prove that he was the owner of the property.
Right. Oh, I love that. Yeah.
And So when we talk about being professional and running this as a business, what greater way to establish credibility than to say, this is me.
Hmm.
Here are my documents that prove that I own this. Because especially when there were all the foreclosures, there were people renting out foreclosed places. Like people
Right.
left, and somebody else was coming in and trying to rent it. So if you present yourself as a professional and you say, okay, here is my application, here's my cover letter. So when you fill out the application, here's where you can send it. You can either mail it to me or email it to me. I'd prefer email, but I understand. Um, Also, here are, you don't have to give them to them, but show them copies of some documents that prove that you're the owner. And, you know, presenting a professional image to these people. You're setting them at ease. And that's part of your job as a salesperson. And I don't think we've ever talked about this before, but as a landlord, you are a salesperson. You're trying to sell them on renting your property. And so, as a salesperson, you need to set them at ease, make them comfortable, and make them want to do business with you.
Yeah, and you brought up something I don't think we've ever touched on, but it's such a great point. Response time. The worst thing you can do is leave somebody alone with their thoughts. Like in your
Yes,
situation where your mind's running wild and you don't know what to think. Um, that's in a worst case scenario, but just in a everyday professional setting, I mean, that response time is really key. You don't want to have a prospective tenant call you and you get back to them a week later or days later. Be, be active in trying to get that response time as quick as possible.
it wouldn't hurt on that cover letter to let them know, put a paragraph or something in that says, through this application process, I'm going to be accepting applications until this date. At that time, I will select a certain number that I will submit for backgrounds. And then when I receive those, I will select the final person. This is the timeline for that happening. If you're not selected as one of the people that I will be submitting for background, I will let you know by this date.
Right.
And if you are selected, I will let you know on that same date. And here is when you can expect to hear from me on all these things. If you need to reach me or you have any questions, because I work during the day, I can only respond to emails and phone calls at night, but I will certainly get back to you by the next day at the latest. And you're presenting a professional image to these people.
Yeah. You're setting it up for another great point is, we hear a lot of times where landlords say that it's a red flag if you've got a tenant, banging down your door saying, I need to move in right away and, trying to rush the process. Uh, Also just kind of gives you an indication of their, you know, character as well. If you've really laid it out for them of what your response is going to be, what the time frame is going to be, and if they can't accept that or work within that, then this might be somebody I may have a problem with that doesn't understand the rules and
Exactly.
that I'm trying to set. So that's an easy way too to help screen some people out and saying, this person just doesn't get it.
That's right. And you could even take it a step further. We've talked in the past about providing tenants with contact information and processes for the ways that you do things, like if there are emergencies. And there are pieces of that that you can pull out without providing any personal information, like the contact number for your plumber or anything like that. You could create a page in this introduction that says, I just want to let you know this is the way I manage my property. And when I have tenants in my property, if they have a problem, this is the process that I ask them to follow, that we work together on. And I found that this works really well. And, they have the ability to contact my plumbers directly if this happens. You can make yourself appear very professional by providing that kind of information. They're going to say, wow, this isn't just some guy trying to rent some property. It's going to give you the credibility to reduce the number of skeptics that you come across.
Right. And, great point you made too, that it's a sales process. And in the beginning stages, it really is. And especially, again, this time of year, first quarter of the year, we're seeing all the stats from last year. So everything from 2014 continues to indicate this is a renter's market. You know, rent is it's not going to flip flop anytime soon. I don't think. And, as it continues, there's some competition there. And I think in order to get the right tenants, you got to compete. And, the good tenants, the right tenants, um, they're like we've said before, they're screening you as much as you're screening them. So, in that sales process, you got to keep that in mind that, it's important that you close the deal. And these are definitely some really great tips on how to do that and how to present yourself to give them, to get them excited about you being their landlord, as crazy as that might seem. But if they're a good tenant that really has no issues paying rent and they can pick wherever they want to go, they've got good credit, nothing bad in their background, they know they're going to be able to go to any place that they want. So why your place? And you got to make them,
Exactly.
you got to set yourself apart.
Yeah, you want to be able to choose the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
And when you find the person that you want them to accept your offer.
Yeah. So I think, just to sort of wrap it up, and dealing with skeptic applicants, it's something we've touched on before. Um, a lot of times it can definitely be tracked back to what you're doing and how you're presenting yourself. So I think, you know, not every time. I mean, I'm not saying that you need to immediately panic when you start dealing with a skeptic tenant and thinking that you're doing everything wrong, but it's not a bad time to just sort of reflect on what you're doing and how you came across. And like I said, a little bit of self awareness goes a long way when you're a landlord. Be
Yes.
aware of how you're coming off and maybe how your ads are coming off, or what you're wearing to these appointments, or how you're talking to them.
Hmm.
These are all things that we can tweak, even if it's not in our everyday character. It's not going to kill you to wear a polo or a button down shirt, an hour out of your life or something like that. So, they're all things that can, they're easy changes, easy little things that you can change. Usually, it's not really big things that usually are causing skepticism. It's usually just a couple of little things that sort of raise a red flag to that applicant.
That's right. Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Stephen. I think that wraps up another evening of night school, and I look forward to talking with you tomorrow evening.
Great. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks for listening to Landlord University, and remember to visit rentprep.com/landlordu to see show notes and access free resources like forms and guides. And be sure to check out Jeff Pearson hosting his own hit podcast at thementorimpact.com.